Hey friends, I hope you're having an amazing day. This is a shameless plug going out to my free downloads. I just loaded up cycling snacks. So these are a great way to make your own healthy snacks for training inside, outside, or for the family. So go to askcoachsylvie.com and download them today. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Secrets from the Saddle, All Things Cycling podcast with your host, Sylvie Doe in Chelsea, Quebec. And we have Stewart Jones sitting in Boise, Idaho. Stewart is a podiatrist. And you'd be like, what's podiatry got to do with cycling? Well, we're going to find out. However, not only is Stewart a podiatrist and a cyclist, but he is also TikTok famous. I say that and he shakes his head because that's where I found him on TikTok. And I just want to encourage you to go and look at Stewart's account because I just thought he was super funny. And then I started diving into his socials and then I saw he was a cyclist. And that's how I reached out, and that's how we are here today. So before I bring Stewart out, here's a little bit of background about him. And then we're just going to dive into all the juicy feet stuff. I know feet aren't juicy, but anyways. Okay, so Stewart grew up in Wyoming, loving the outdoors, but he knew I love this sentence. He knew he was not going to last as a miner, he says roughneck. It's not like redneck. I was like redneck, roughneck, same thing. Anyways, so with that incentive, he went back to school and started studying athletic training and as a pursuit of amateur bodybuilding and personal training. Then he decided he wanted to continue school and went into podiatry, which led him to go to Miami and to get his master's degree. So he is also, as I mentioned, an avid cyclist. He has helped organize a charity ride called the ALS Tour de Funk after a close friend was diagnosed with, what is that?
It's Lou Gehrig's disease.
Lou Gehrig's disease. Okay, thanks. And there you have it. And he's been a foot and ankle doctor for the last 22 years. Welcome, Stewart, to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I always love to get started with the question, how did you get into cycling? And then, how it led to podiatry.
Well, actually, podiatry led to the cycling.
Oh, well, let's hear all about it then.
So I was in medical school, which basically you're just in class all day and studying all the rest of your time. And some friend decided that, he needed to get out and do some exercises. He had a spare bike. So we hopped on A1A and we were just biking down the beach. And that became a daily routine. And I just ended up loving it. I would just go in, 15-minute rides turned into 2-hour rides and so on and so forth. And I just fell in love. But it was sea level. And the only elevation you had was the causeways going over the traffic.
Oh, this is Miami and this is Florida, right?
This is Florida.
Yeah. Okay, I get it.
First time I end up back in Wyoming, I get this brilliant plan. I'm going over the Jackson Pass. And I don't know if you ever had that. That's 10,000 feet of elevation. Oh. Yeah, that was fun. I was smaller than I am now, but still it was a long ride.
So did you make it?
I did.
That's good. Because he was like, should I turn around? Should I turn around? Should I keep going?
It's one of those where you're kind of going back and forth across the road.
Oh gosh, is it that steep?
Miles an hour. Yeah, it was fun.
So tell us about your schooling and how you decided to go, from where you were in Wyoming to podiatry. Like what pulled you to that profession?
Well, like I said, in Wyoming, where I lived, you had two choices, either oil or mining. And after being, a quarter mile underground in the mines, I decided that that's just not what I wanted to do. I worked construction. I mean, I was just killing my body. And so I thought, well, let's try school. And I thought, well, I've been interested in, athletes. And so I went into athletic training and realized that I just wasn't going to be satisfied taping ankles and treating injuries like that.
Okay.
So it just led to podiatry, which, gave me the opportunity to do surgery, see patients, and kind of love it. So that's kind of where I ended up.
So can I ask you kind of like a back pedal? Did you go straight to work after high school?
Well, I worked all through high school, and
Right.
believe me, I wasn't much of a student. So other
Some
than
of us
athletics,
are kind of like that.
it was just, I mean, I was an art major. So,
Oh,
that was only classes I really went to. But yeah, I decided I better get serious about school. So it took a few years, and I ended up in a community college, which was perfect for me. I learned out I can actually learn, and I was pretty smart. So, it just led to one thing to
pretty
another.
smart guy, eh? Apparently.
I'm not saying I'm not smart, but um, I learned how to learn. And yeah, it gives me an opportunity to do a lot of other things too. Uh, I've always had to have a creative outlet. Right now it's TikTok and other things. It's been, art. And then I have to have an outlet. So cycling is, when I need to get out, get fresh air, that's what I do.
All right. So you did say you're telling me that your most creative time is like in the middle of the morning. How do your kids feel about that?
Well, they're asleep. They don't even know.
Yeah. Like, or they're just going to bed when you're waking up.
No, I get up whenever I get up, usually between 3 and 4, and I'll just go to work, and I'll take an hour or two and do stuff that I want to do. Then I'll start working, and somewhere
Right.
in there I'll get a workout in here and there, and
So do you still engage in your cycling? Oh, yes, that's right. We were just talking about that both. It's pretty snowy where you are right now. So
yeah.
what is your physical outlet right now?
Well, I when I'm not cycling, I do a lot of rowing. Otherwise, it's
Oh, okay.
just weights and just quick hit workouts. I don't have much
Nice.
time, so 20-30 minute
Yeah.
workouts are about as all I can handle right now.
So let's talk about feet and cycling. So I was just asking you beforehand if they actually cross over, because we're thinking like, cyclists, and I can think of like ankle, maybe not so much ankles, more knee and hips, but and you mentioned that you do help cyclists with other things. What are those other things? I'd love to know.
Usually cycling injuries involve other parts of the body, usually
Yeah.
slipping, hitting the road. But there are a few overuse type injuries, and it all really has to do with what type of cycling shoe you're wearing. If you
Okay.
just, most people go in, they go to the cycling shop, and they try to pick what's on sale, the cheapest, cycling shoe, because they ain't cheap. And so they end up just, sticking with what they got. And if it's too narrow, then I see neuromas. That's usually the only major, cycling injury is a
And
neuroma.
what's a neuroma? You
It's
have
a
to
pinched
explain all
nerve.
this stuff.
Okay. Neuroma. If you'd had one, you'd know. Okay. It's
Okay.
very painful.
I'm sure.
Everybody who's been on the bike long enough has a hot spot in the ball of their foot,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the starting of one. Usually that's just a pressure point that's kind of getting friction from the shoe. But an neuroma would be pinching nerve between the metatarsals, which are the long bones of the foot. We call
Yeah.
them metacarpals. So basically they kind of form knuckles at the ball of the foot, which are kind of padded. And those knuckles are where you push off the ground. And that's usually where you're putting that cleat down onto the
Right.
shoe. And if that nerve kind of just pops in between those bones long enough, it gets swollen, it gets inflamed and irritated. And then you know, you get that burning spot that goes on all day long, especially all night long when you're sleeping. And so you just
Right.
concentrate on anything else. So neuromas are probably the most common problem with cyclists, other than, you know, they're having knee issues or they're having hip issues. And
Mhm.
you know, you don't really think about, well, what can you do inside the cycling shoe unless you've had a custom cycling orthotic made or something like that. And so I don't make the orthotics, but I do guide them to somebody who does.
Yeah, so this is a great question because always getting, even for myself, sometimes like I try not to get a narrow shoe because I prefer like something way wider. But numbing at the toes. And also, is that part of it too? Like just because a lot of it is placement of the cleat and the different cleats, like, you know, like Shimano is very small. You got the look pedal has more of a base. Do you do any recommendations? Like, is it maybe predominantly like what kind of cleat size that they have on the bottom of their shoe that causes that as well?
I do like the Shimano cleat that's a little bit more triangular and wider, because it
Oh,
does take up more surface area under the shoe.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it has a lot to do with it. Cycling shoe width is the biggest thing. You know, if you were to
Right.
step down and just see how much your foot spreads when you're looking down on it, you need a shoe that allows that spread. And there's not too many cycling shoes that actually allow that. And then a lot
Yeah.
of them, just like conventional shoes, will come to more of a point near the toes. And then now you're pushing your toes toward the center, and now they're getting, you know, squoze in there too. So, you know, you really need a properly width shoe. You need to figure out where that cleat fits best to alleviate some of that pressure point, because really that's the only contact with the pedal, and it doesn't get much of a break, you know,
Yeah.
downstroke or upstroke. You're still, you know, putting a lot of pressure on that one spot all the time.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about those pixie shoes we used to wear in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you got well, that's a whole other subject. Got a whole lot of ladies with bunions because our toes used to be pressed too far.
Exactly. Exactly. But it
Yeah.
keeps me playing, it keeps me busy.
You know what? Actually, I have, so what did you call that? The pinching of the nerve?
An aroma.
Neuroma. I believe I get that with certain heels that I have. Now that I think I
Yes.
slide my foot in and I get that like right from the bottom of my foot. And I'm just like, and it's because my toes are too close together. And I'm just like, I love these shoes.
And gravity's pushing you down there even further because of the heel.
God, what we go through. And to think about, we have to transfer that over to our cycling shoes. We should not be doing that, ladies, or men. No, men know what we're talking about. But so with regards to that, does that get any worse? Like if it's like over time?
So there's things you can do to alleviate some of the pressure. Metatarsal pads, and I noticed that Shimano for a while had something like the body geometry insoles, I think is what they were called, that had a little bit of a raise. So if you pulled out, it'd be a raise kind of right in that center area, not in the arch, but a little bit further up the toes. And that's to kind of push up on the actual bones, so you're not putting so much pressure on the joints. But buy pads that you can put down into your cycling shoes, it'll help that, and it'll help cause or take away some of the hot spots you get.
Oh, okay. So there's nothing that will lead them to you for any kind of surgery. Like you can.
Oh yeah.
Oh really? Oh.
We'll do cortisone shots.
Oh.
Yeah, those are fun. Had that experience, have you?
Yeah. Was it cortisone? No, it was I had to have a wart removed from the bottom of my shoe.
Yeah, that's a painful shot.
And so that was number one. And then I had a piece of rubber that, believe it or not, this was 10 years after I stepped on this nail, that it shoved this piece of plastic into my foot and it was starting to come out and I could feel it. And yeah, so that was the freezing and then the cutting of that. Oh,
It's amazing. The body will take those
yeah, it was
foreign objects
extracting
and
that.
years
And I just like,
later it'll push it to the surface.
yeah. And I was just like, oh my God, you could just feel it. I'm like, I thought for sure it was, it was okay. Like it was, we're doing some construction. You step on this nail, it went through my running shoe into my foot. And then 10 years later, you've got a piece of it coming back out. Yeah. So just a needle in your foot. Yeah. I felt that.
That's about the same as a shot for an neuroma.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that can alleviate that kind of pain.
Cortisone will take away the inflammation and allow you to function. It just doesn't take away the mechanical problem. So if you don't make the changes in your shoes, then the neuroma will come back after the shot wears off. So ultimately, surgery is, usually the final option. And that's where we just go and take out a section of the nerve, about that big. And no more problem because there's no more nerve there.
But so it's the end of the nerve?
So the nerve at that point is just giving you sensation in between the toes. So the only sensation you lose is, between the toes.
Okay. So you take the very end of it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Does that happen often?
It does. It works.
Really?
But again,
is that better than fixing your shoe?
No. People would just do that, then they wouldn't have to have the shots or surgery. But typically, I'm not going to say it's particularly just women, but they just have to wear those shoes.
Right. So, hey, anybody listening to this, and if you're having this problem, go buy a pair of expensive cycling shoes that are going to eliminate that problem, right? Over
Bont.
Pardon?
Bont. B-O-N-T. Look them up. Bont cycling shoes.
Bont. Cycling shoes. Is he local? Is he in the States? All right. Either I'm frozen or Stewart's frozen. I suspect he'll be coming back. Stewart, are you there? Bont cycling shoes. Okay, we're gonna have to look that up. Hold on. We'll look that up while Stewart's. Oh shit. All right, here you go. Why is there no, pink. $600 US. Genuine leather. I would like a red cycling shoe. Why is there never any red? You're in a different location. Oh, now your audio is not working. Look, I was looking up the cycling shoes. All right, audio's connecting. Now you muted yourself.
All right.
All
This is my
right.
tablet now. We've tried my phone. We've tried my computer. Now this is the tablet.
Okay, is it plugged in?
It is, yeah, not plugged in.
Yeah,
But let's,
you don't want it to like die. Let's make sure everything's plugged in. So I was looking at those shoes. Yeah, they're not cheap.
they're not. And if you get them custom built, they're even more expensive. But believe me, they're worth it.
Is that so? Is that what you prescribe? You send
Typically for a lot of different problems, just because you get a custom insole with it, and they, you know, they mold them to your foot, so there's no pressure points no matter what. They heat them up, mold them, and they
oh
kind of
wow.
transfer everywhere.
Yeah, because I was looking like they're genuine leather. And I was like, hey, they even have red. I'm like,
Oh,
I need red cycling shoes. I'm not picky or anything. So, all right. Yeah, so there's that, the pressure point, and what is the other ones that issues that you typically help cyclists with?
A lot of ingrown toenails.
Oh,
Just again, ill-fitting shoes for the most part, but just a lot of time, you know, one day can irritate it, and you know, wart, you know, sweaty feet cause any kind of infection. That's just a viral infection of the foot. So, which you know now also well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's talk about ingrown toenails. I know everybody's like, what? But how, because I'm curious, like, how does that start? And is it because not only because of your shoes, but is it due to trimming improperly? Like, how do you avoid that?
Well, it's genetic. So if you have a family
Really?
history of ingrown toenails, then you really have to be particular about how you cut your nails and what you're wearing, because those other factors are going to be, you know, a lot more problematic if you've already have a family history of it. We see it run right through families, but
Seriously.
yeah, I mean, going to you get a pedicure. I've seen a lot of bad pedicures lead to ingrown toenails.
Ooh.
And then, you know, what I call bathroom surgery. That's where people kind of go in and attack it on their own. And once they've butchered it, or not down talking bad about urgent care doctors, but a lot of them will try to take care of an ingrown toenail, and then one, it's traumatic. So, you know, the patient's already been traumatized by that experience, and then they end up coming here. You know, I treat them 3 or 4 times a day, so it's second nature here. It's just
Seriously?
you want somebody who does them a lot so that you can get it done right, because you don't want to redo an ingrown toenail if it's done wrong.
Okay, so explain what exactly, like the ingrown toenail, but exactly an ingrown toenail. So you said it's hereditary. Now, I'm not even going to try and explain what I think it is, but explain exactly what an ingrown toenail is.
Well, an ingrown toenail is when the nail itself starts to grow into the skin, usually because you've cut it back past where that fold of skin on the side. So if you look at your nail, you'll see where the fold should meet the nail. And most people, at least on their fingernails, will round them.
Yeah.
You should cut them straight across on your toenails, because as long as you can see the corner in each side of the nail, there's no chance of getting an ingrown toenail.
Oh.
But if you round it or you try to cut it out because it was digging in there a little bit, then you're going to leave a little piece of nail under the skin that's going to grow out and start to cause, it's going to irritate the skin's going to swell. And at that point, it's painful. And then it's just one step away from getting infected. Now, an infected ingrown toenail is the worst because now you've got an infection and that irritation too. So,
as I'm like,
like, yeah.
yeah, maybe I've been clipping my nails a little too around the sides and my toes. Okay, I will stop that. Everybody stop that.
Everybody does it.
So I can't believe it's hereditary though, but that is interesting. So ingrown toenails, I can see that. What else comes in?
Well, as far as cyclists, you know, I see cyclists for bunions. And obviously
bunions.
Bunions are just a target for any type of improperly fitting shoes. So you're just going to get rubbing on that bump on the outside of your foot. And, it's again, finding a shoe that kind of accommodates all that is going to be your best friend. Otherwise it's just gonna start to hurt more and more every time you get on the bike. And you get halfway into a ride and then it becomes unbearable and you still have to get home. So
right. I have seen a lot of women. Well, that's kind of sometimes a conversation piece is like, we talk about lots of stuff when we're on our rides. But if you've ever cycled with women, like it can get quite colorful. And I've seen like, then it's like show and tell. Look at my feet. Look at this. And I do know quite a few ladies who've gone in for surgeries, things like that to straighten it. Now, here's a question. Of course, you see things online that claim to straighten your toe. Is there any truth to those, like the ones that kind of try and curve your toe out and straighten it? Is there like, you see the straps on the feet to like kind of move it out, and then the padding in between the toes? Do you recommend stuff like that?
I don't, because it's a structural problem. At that point, the joint is, it should be aligned. Now you've got a joint that's crooked. And so all you're doing with those splints are pulling it into place. But as soon as you take the splint off, it's just going to go right back because the bone's already adapted to each side. So, and really you can only wear them at night because they're so bulky, you're not going to be able to put them on your foot and then wear a shoe with all that, either the padding or the splints and the straps on there. So, it looks great in the morning. And as soon as you put your foot down on the floor, it'll just go right back. So I don't see that working at all. You can train the muscles in your feet, though. That's a whole different thing. And that's something that we're not taught in school because, it's like Western medicine. We're taught to prescribe, cut. But there's a podiatrist out of Australia called the Barefoot Podiatrist, and he's come up with all kinds of series of kind of yoga, Zen type, exercises you can do for your feet, and they actually do work. So, if you want to exercise your feet and go through that, you can look him up on the internet. He's got a lot of good exercises. You're using rubber bands instead of exercise bands, and you're kind of doing these weird crunches with your feet, but you can train the muscles to support your foot better. And like what I do is I give my patients an option. If they're having problems with instability and their foot not functioning properly, they can wear an orthotic, which they have to move from shoe to shoe, and that supports them. But the more you wear a brace, the more you depend on the brace. So, once you get so dependent on that brace, you can't walk without them, then that's a problem.
Right.
So I try to use it temporarily while they do perform exercises or, figure out what they need to be doing right to function properly. And then they can come out of an orthotic or the brace. Unfortunately, it's just not going to work for a bunion because, again, the bone's adapted. So either you live with it or you fix it. And I'm
Right.
sure everybody hears the nightmares of bunion surgery. It's not a fun procedure,
Right.
and it has to be done right, because there's many ways to fix a bunion, and if you approach it wrong from the beginning, you're just going to have a bad outcome, and at some point it just becomes unfixable. So you really want to go to
Yeah.
somebody who knows exactly where the problem is and attacks that level of the deformity, and not the easiest one to treat.
Right. Because
So
I imagine there would be like a lot of scar tissue and calcium buildup because they're so big, right? Like they're such a big bump.
yeah, so part of the bump is the actual joint dislocating. Now you're seeing the part that should be
Oh,
inside the joint sticking out the foot. And the other
oh,
part is, it's been sticking out there. And just like, the skin gets hard when it's irritated, you're
mhm.
rubbing your shoes on that bone, and the bone will build calcium deposits, and it'll get bigger
Yeah.
and bigger too. So, um, it's a bad problem, but we've all had that one grandma that her feet are just crossed over and gnarly. And I mean, she's 80 years old. She's lived her whole life without fixing her feet. So at that point, why do it?
Yeah. She didn't even know what that was back
Right.
then to like
It's like, I don't want to do anything about
introduce it
that.
to her. Well, I have a little so I've what is that debilitating foot injury? It's not an injury, it's like
You're talking about Liz Frank's fracture?
no. Um you need to get a cortisol shot for it, and it can be debilitating. It's more around the heel. I can't think of what it
Oh,
is right
plantar
now.
fasciitis.
Yeah, that's it. You see a lot. I bet you see a lot of that in runners or triathletes.
See it in everybody. It's a very, very common problem.
Yeah,
Everybody's going to get it to some extent.
I had a little bit of it. I'm sure I did. And I started into some aggressive massage on my calves and my Achilles, and I got this.
Oh, the rollers.
Yeah, I just keep it underneath my desk, and I just like, because I'm in my bare feet all the time and at
Mhm.
home. So
Nice.
I keep it here, and I just massage, and then I'm like, oh, on the sides, and so I figured like back then, like it scared me because it just came up so quickly, and I was cycling at the time. And then I remember having a conversation with this woman. She's like, yeah, I had it and I couldn't walk for a year. And I was just like, I was like, what? And I'm like, how do I get rid of this?
Yeah, and it just takes stretching and working out the knots
Yeah.
there. The rollers work good, and it can happen to anybody. I mean, it's just strain right there where the plantar fascia, is
Yeah.
attaching to that heel bone, and
Hmm.
over time it gets harder and harder to treat because it becomes more and more chronic. It's
Right.
easier to get an acute stage when it starts, but versus letting it go forever and then trying to treat it.
Yeah. I don't know how anybody could let it go forever, because when it started with me, I was just like, what is that shooting pain in my heel? And it like, I can't even hardly walk. I can't, I don't know how somebody would let that go for a long time, because that
How
was
they do. It's crazy.
wow. Wow. So is there anything else that you can share with us? Oh, let's talk about the charity ride that you helped organize for your friend. And it was ALS,
ALS, yeah.
the Tour de
So
Funk. Is that in Idaho?
yeah, so COVID kind of killed it. We started it in 2019,
Oh
and
gosh.
was the first ride, and it was my first time I ever jumped in any kind of an organizing an event like that. I've been many of them, but I didn't know what went on behind the scenes. There's a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
I got to learn all the local bike shops, and became that's actually good contacts I still
Oh
use.
yeah.
But yeah, my friend, he was my anesthetist for oh, probably about 4 or 5 years. And then, he started complaining about, his shoulder twitching and his finger going numb. And he went to doctor after doctor, just got one diagnosis after another, and, Lyme's disease. And then finally he got tested, and, they actually did the biopsy, and he had ALS, which is, it's a death sentence. And literally the doctor told him that day, is like, just go home, get your, everything in order, because,
Yeah.
this is like life expenses about 2 years.
Wow.
And he so, we just watched him struggle, and we wanted to help out and try to, raise money. And since, a group of us were cyclists, we decided that would be a great event. So we organized the ride, and then it's gone for 3 years now, but it's been a virtual event. So I'm not sure what the future holds.
You're not
But
bringing it out this year? Like everybody's kind of
I
bringing
think we're
their
going to do
events
something.
back.
Unfortunately, he actually just died this month. So,
Oh no.
we just had the funeral for him, and very, very hard. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're going to carry on. It was very successful the first year out. So we'll see what the future holds for
You
us.
have to, Stewart, in his honor.
And I think we will. We kind of signed on with the ALS Association, which was a great resource, but they kind of took control of it. And, we kind of want to bring it back to more
Basic.
local. Yeah.
So
we'll see.
was it just in your town in Boise?
Yeah. So it was a metric century, and we had, anywhere from a 1 mile to, we had 10, 20, 35-mile rides for the day. And
oh, that's great. You can, it allows everybody to participate.
Yeah, skill levels.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might figure out and do it again this year. So we'll see.
Well, you have to share it with me if you do, because get that advertised or out on social media for you.
I appreciate that.
So what are your personal plans for the cycling season once the snow disappears? Have you been inspired by some events that you've been seeing online?
Well, after talking with you through email, I really keep planning to get my climbing skills a little bit better.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's right. I said I'd give you a couple tips.
Yeah, you promised. So yeah, I'm just too big. And I want to get a gravel bike. I want to start doing some gravel riding. So got my mountain bike. I have my few road bikes. But yeah, I need a gravel bike.
Couple road bikes.
It's a source of contention. You can't have enough bikes, so can't have too many.
Yeah. Well, if you get a gravel bike, I don't know, it might replace the road bike. Not the road bike, the mountain bike.
True. It's getting a little worn. I kill myself mountain biking. Again, I'm just too big. When I go down hard. So
yeah, and you can't afford it. That's the thing about you. It's the surgery, the fingers, the wrists. Like you can't afford to hit the pavement or the.
No. Yeah, I had a big spill in Miami. Talking about Miami. It was on A1A, and there, you got these big metro buses, and they hate cyclists because, they have to leapfrog. You're taking their lane, and so you have to just keep going around them. And I got into a construction zone, and apparently the bus ran me off into a hole. So my front tire was in the hole. I went into the intersection. And I didn't wake up for 3 days, but my helmet was cracked and it fall off, but it did save my head.
Whoa!
And I did, sustain a brachial plexus injury to my arm, and that was completely useless for almost a month. But so I've been down hard on a bike, and I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, not now. Not that you're older now. I know the older we get, the more fragile. I'm just like, just going to take it easy. Even though like I went out mountain biking last year thinking I was a 30-year-old again. And I was going to hit the trails like I used to. And boy, that was a big eye opener about a couple feet in. I'm just like, I think I might have bitten off too much going on this trail. But anyways, I made it through okay. And it was just kind of, had a little laugh over that. And if I'm going to do that again, I need to start from the beginner trails like everybody else and move my way up to the advanced if I want to not hurt myself. But yeah, okay. So you want some tips for hills. Okay. Well, let me just ask you a couple questions first. When you typically ride, do you ride on the big ring or the small ring?
I'm always in the big ring until I start approaching a hill. I'll start out, well, actually, I do start out in the big ring. And then I will start to shift down.
In the hill?
So maybe that's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the first things you should do is prepare for your hill, especially if you can see it, you're approaching it, getting into a lower gear and then getting into your hill. That will help you avoid dropping chains. If you've ever done that, when your chain is like on the granny gear and you're in the big ring and then you're like, okay, it's time. And then it just like drops right off and you're like, fuck. And then, yeah. So to avoid that, yes, the number one thing is approach your hill in your small ring and use all your gears. And you will also not even burn your legs out in the process. Like you won't get to that time where, everything's hard because you are in the hardest or easiest hard gear. And then you drop it and then you're spinning and then you got to adjust. And so does that sound familiar? Kind of.
Yeah. Give yourself some gears to go through.
And then the person behind you, like, what the hell are you doing? So
not many people behind me at that point.
Oh, I'm sure you're riding with somebody sometimes. So approaching your hill is always the best way. Get yourself prepared for the hill and take your hill, and then adjust your gears accordingly. And then of course, at some point you're going to max out and then you just settle in. And then there's other things. Are you a seated to standing climber? Which one do you prefer?
I try to stay in the saddle most of the time. I'll stand occasionally and pedal, but
okay. Yeah. So I'm guessing when you stand, you're like at that point where like, oh, I think I need to stand just to change things up. But then when you stand, you kind of blow your legs up and then you sit down, you're like, that wasn't a really good idea.
Yeah, I usually shift up a couple times to stand and then shift down after I sit down again. So maybe that's wrong.
Well, no, but the thing is, if you're going to get into standing climbing, is starting to train yourself on being able to stay there and continue your climb. Like if you're a predominantly seated hill climber, start training your legs because it is a different muscle group to skill level to be a hill climber out of the saddle, so that when you do stand, you don't blow up your legs and then sit down and you can't sustain what you're doing. So it's going and doing those intervals, seated and standing, big ring, small ring, half and half. So there's a lot of different. Do you ever do intervals?
I haven't for a while, but yeah, I used to.
Intervals is a good way to get strong for your hills. At least a couple times a month to go and do those.
So I will be working on that for sure.
Well, I've got lots of other things I can share with you, but But those are the main ones. Like there's how you transition from seated to standing. There's changing your gears without grinding. So there's a lot of things. Well, it's not a lot of things. There's like the main things to think about when you're hitting your hills and you're riding. Yeah. But the power to weight ratio is probably, will help obviously as well.
Yeah.
It always feels nice to be lighter, a little bit faster on the saddle, but
Does make a difference. I know that for sure.
yeah. I mean, that's another conversation. But I do help a lot of people in that respect too. Well, more women than men, but because sometimes men just don't ask for help, Stu.
Don't. One thing I'm trying to get better at now, so I've converted over the last 4 or 5 years. I've done keto, and now I'm on the carnivore diet, and that's the hardest thing. Is I find on the ketogenic diet, it's a totally different energy expenditure. So when you bonk on carbs, then you're useless for a long time.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to convert from carbs to fat. So I can sustain my energy all day being, using fat for energy, but I can't do those spurts of energy. I mean, I'm limited to about 5 minutes of, getting my heart rate up, and then I have to back down or else I'm going to bonk. And when you bonk on, fat, it just takes maybe 15 minutes of regeneration and then you're back up there. But it's taken me a long time to kind of adapt to that.
Yeah. Keto, it's not like a lifestyle you can sustain. As an athlete, we always, kind of avoid any kind of low fat, low sugar, keto.
Extremes.
Yeah, because they're just not sustainable, especially if you want to get into performance and over time, they just kind of work against you, like you're not getting the weight loss and the energy level. And then you have to think about all the fat you've been eating. Like you're a doctor, kind of the arteries, the clog, like the cholesterol thing that kind of adds up over time. So it is a balance of carbs to fats to proteins. And I always err on the side of more carbs, less protein when I'm out. And the protein comes in after. Even before, it's like, if you're going to do carbs or protein, it's like mixed with carbs, beforehand, and then carbs during, and then protein afterwards for the recovery phase. And fats are in there, but.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a totally different source of energy.
Yeah. I tried keto for a month. I was so tired because I wasn't eating any nutrients. And I mean, I lost weight. I mean, I lost 9 inches. I'm like 9 inches and 6 pounds. Yeah, I was ripped, but I was sick and I was tired. So I'm like, this isn't really for me.
Yeah, no, it takes a while to convert to the energy source. So
yeah, I have a friend who works on that, but again, it's a very fine science, but you got to be doing everything all day, every day, right? Yes. To be doing that. You can't just expect Saturday's group ride, I'm going to be using fats for fuel and
you can't go back and forth. You really have to stick with it. But yeah, it's kind of a different, it takes a while to convert, I'll tell you that. But
yeah. So, and then there's sleep, right? As you know, you're using your Aura ring, and that is a huge, that plays an even bigger role than your food is, how well are you recovering and rejuvenating your body when you sleep.
Exactly.
Looks like you're gonna fall asleep.
No way.
I know it looks sunny there, but
It's far from sunny.
is it?
Well, I guess the sun's out, but it's just white.
It's white. Well, with that, Stu, and like I mentioned, everybody, go check out Stewart on his TikToks because he's super funny. I was gonna get him to do a little tutorial for us because he's really good at the multi-character scripts.
3 o'clock in the morning. Who else am I gonna have to play?
Yeah, right. Now I can see why you're so creative. I'm like, next time I see your file, I'm like, good morning. So where else can we find you, Miss Stewart?
Well, Facebook, Instagram, I think I gave you the links.
Yeah, I've got everything here. So you have your own website as well?
I don't. Well, my practice has a website, so you can find me there, but that's more for scheduling an appointment and seeing me.
If anybody's in the area, idahofootandAnkle.com.
It's us right there.
Maybe he takes appointments over TikTok. Do you do that? No, I'm just kidding.
Afraid what kind of appointments I'd get over TikTok.
Yeah, right. Hey.
It's an interesting crowd out there.
Isn't it? It's like, anyways, we could talk about TikTok, just like everybody gets, I mean, glued to it. Sometimes you just gotta cut yourself off and go to bed.
It's a time waster for sure.
It is. Yeah. So with that, everybody should be getting on their bikes anyways. It's about that time of the year.
True.
So with that, I want to thank you, Stewart. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a couple of things, and we look forward to seeing you maybe come back. We'll talk a little bit more about feet or how the summer was. And so thank you to our listeners for joining us. Don't forget to follow the podcast on Instagram and give us a review on Apple Podcast and all that. Share.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Stewart. Take care, everybody. Bye.